We're in the Library of Congress. It's an historic building. It's a historic place for, I guess, all our great literature and everything about this country and around the world, and it's fantastic for National Treasure, Book of Secrets to be able to come here.
Maybe the most extraordinary buildings in the world are St. Peter's Church, St. Paul's Cathedral, and the Library of Congress.
Gates abducts the president, lets him go, and then heads to the Library of Congress? Why?
Maybe he wants to check out a book. Welcome to the Library of Congress.
We don't know in this country how extraordinary this building is. You walk in there and you realize there's a true extraordinary treasure dedicated to education and knowledge and history. Without a library, without knowledge, we're useless.
Hello, I'm Nicolas Cage, and I'm visiting you from the Library of Congress.
It's an amazing place. It's just enormous and gives you a real sense of history when you're in there.
You can't help but feel the history, and that's why the Library of Congress is so wonderful, because it piques my interest in history that I didn't even have before.
Great work. This is not your usual library. You know, the atmosphere here is truly astonishing.
Well, we're standing in the Great Hall of the Library of Congress. This building was finished in 1897. It was very much a symbol of America arriving on the world cultural scene. This is to Washington what the Paris Opera is to Paris. And you could spend a day here and not cover everything.
There's more stored knowledge here and more formats of knowledge and creativity than there's ever been under one institution. It's a great inspirational as well as a functionally useful place to do research on almost any subject about anything.
Where do we start?
This way. We'll have to sneak in.
We're in the main control room. We're right under the main reading room, a gorgeous room in the Library of Congress. It's kind of a hub of activity. We get about 12 to 1,500 books a day, new additions to the general collections. And they come here, we sort them, we arrange them, and send them off to be shelved in the stacks. We're going to enter what are called the South Stacks. It's 10 levels of book stacks. Each of these levels has a capacity of about 90,000 volumes.
My job is to bring in documents. We only collect the original materials and only the personal papers of significant people, those who have made a contribution to American life and culture. This is for manuscripts, one custodial division. There are others for music, for maps, for prints and photographs.
We have the most extensive scientific laboratory here as well. We do a lot of research and testing in order to be able to characterize our materials so that we will know how they deteriorate, and that way we will know how better to preserve them for the future.
The three things that a library has to do: it has to acquire material, it has to preserve it, and it has to share it, make it accessible.
This is just the conveyor loop, and it connects the center desk in the main reading room with the control room. So if a reader has requested any kind of library material, it comes to this location from the stacks in this building or the stacks in one of our other buildings. We put them on this conveyor system. When books are put on down there, they come up here. We remove them here, and we deliver them to the reader at their seat number in the reading room.
The Library of Congress. It's the biggest library in the world. Over 20 million books.
The first time we were here, we were in this great reading room, but now we've got a lot more, and so we're traveling a bit more throughout the library. There are so many little places to go, including the stacks, where you just have millions and millions of books. It's a whole system that's been in here for, decades of how to bring books up, how to shuttle things around. There's no way to know what's here till you come here.
Welcome to the Prints and Photographs Division at the Library of Congress. We're holding about 14 million pictures, spanning centuries of visual information. The library's collected very heavily on both sides of the brain. We have the documentary images, but we also have fine art and everything in between. We go back Dürer, Rembrandt, pre-photography, visual communication before photography. We have very well documented here too. We have the longest surviving portrait photograph, Robert Cornelius. And it may be the first. Can't prove that completely. It's one of the top treasures, the oldest portrait photograph. Your movie is about the people who killed Lincoln. So here in the Civil War photograph collection, you have the Lincoln conspirators, John Wilkes Booth, one of his co-conspirators, Lewis Payne, and the hanging of the 4 conspirators in the Navy Yard in Washington in the summer of 1865. We have about 14 million pictures in the collection, and 1 million are already available online through the internet through the catalogs.
We have virtually every important kind of document, anything from coded notes between Madison and Jefferson in codes to a telegram from a commander in Pearl Harbor saying this is the real thing, something like this is for real. Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence, 2 copies of the Gettysburg Address, Madison's original notes on the Constitution, a copy of the Bill of Rights that was sent to the states. We have about 60 million documents here.
Now, you know, there's a requirement. If you are President of the United States, you must be a surveyor. We have 12 maps by George Washington, original manuscript pieces here. This is George Washington's map of Alexandria, Virginia. Now, we have maps when he was 15, and we have maps made 2 months before he died. The one 2 months before he died, he was still working on his Mount Vernon estate.
I thought you might want to take a look at this.
This is a map of Mount Vernon drawn by George Washington himself.
That is exactly what it is.
The Geography and Map Division is the largest map library in the world. We have 5.5 million maps, 80,000 atlases, 500 globes, 3,000 raised relief images, and 20,000 CDs and DVDs of digital files, cartographic files. This is an atlas made in Venice in 1544, and it's on skin, on vellum. It's all manuscript again. These are all handmade. The earliest piece that we have an example of is 5,000 years old for the Tigris-Euphrates River region.
XY is the book classification code.
Stands for special collections, which means very, very special books. Where are they?
This way. We'll have to sneak in.
This is one of the great treasures that we have in the library. It's the Bay Psalm book. And this was printed in Massachusetts in 1640. And it's the first book that was printed in North America. This book was not only printed, but it was bound in the colonies. It's a book of Psalms, and it's called the Bay Psalm books because it was printed for the Massachusetts Bay Colony. There's enormous demand to see this book because it's #1 in the top 100 pieces of Americana. So we have to take really good care of it.
We have a long history of working with traditional materials like vellum and parchment and paper and books and leather and those kinds of materials. And we try to be able to know exactly what things are made of so we'll know how they deteriorate. Also, it helps us to know if they're authentic or not. We have a lot of analytical equipment here, and one of the things we have that is very useful is a multispectral camera, which allows us to look at materials under infrared light and under ultraviolet light, and that will tell us things that you can't see with the naked eye.
Look at this. See that?
It says smudge.
It is tremendously important that we preserve the historical legacy of our own country and indeed of as much of the world's creativity and history as possible.
This isn't about a stuffy library. This is great mysteries and extraordinary little pieces of information. Who put all these books here? Look at these little tiny spaces and rooms. Who knows what's in all of this? And you also get a sense that this is Congress's library. Everything that anyone needs to know is here. So it's just sort of like a mysterious place that is just filled with intrigue and suspense, and you don't know. You say, okay, libraries are boring. Not really.
It makes you want to come here. It makes you want to see the Library of Congress. It makes you want to spend time here and sit in those chairs and read some of the wonderful things that are in this building.
It's not just that it's available, but that it's available forever. And that's kind of what you want from your kind of government library, that they're going to look after the eternity of things.